silence, please. Please stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
We have a moment of silence, please. Okay, roll call, please, Ms. Lawrence.
Okay. Griffith,
Here.
Mr. Hawes is absent. Ms. House,
Here.
Ms. McDermott,
Here.
Mr. McGinley,
Present.
Mr. Perry,
Here.
Ms. Radel,
Here.
Ms. Sedman,
Here.
Mr. Schnee,
Present.
Mr. Urban,
Here.
Mr. Vogt.
Here.
10 of 11 are present.
Thank you. The first thing we'll do a motion to suspend the bylaws regarding the individual requirement. The majority of participating in the meeting must be physically present. Ms. Howe, do you make that motion? Do
Yes, I make that motion.
we have a second for Ms. Howe?
Second, Urban. Second.
Who was that, Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Second, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Going down to the next motion, suspend the bylaws regarding the conduct of public meetings to the extent the current format is inconsistent with the term of the manager's emergency declaration. We have a motion.
Mr. McGinley,
Kendra.
do we need that? There is no more executive declaration.
Well, there's a governor's emergency declaration,
Yeah, but this refers to the manager's emergency
does.
declaration.
correct?
There is no
There is
more.
An addition or a edit prior to the state's emergency declaration. Instead of the managers. Hearing none,
What does the governor's emergency declaration have to do with us conducting our meetings?
social distancing, all those issues that are part of the requirements, not, should we say requirements, but stipulations.
But the social distancing is a certain amount of people, right? 6 feet,
6
so
feet
many
by
people.
6 feet, certain amount of people.
Right.
All the other things that are listed, some of which are done with retail stores, restaurants and bars. Do we have anybody who would like to make that addition or edit?
Present.
Mr. Sneed, do we have a second?
Sheila.
All in favor of to make that edit? Change it from the state's emergency to state and change it to the state's emergency declaration. Indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition?
No.
No,
Mr. Griffith,
Walter.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Unnecessary.
Okay. Any opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. We're moving down into public comment on the proposed ordinance, amending Luzerne County zoning map to rezone 3 parcels of property totaling 2.83 acres in Ross Township from mixed zoning districts, which are B3 and S1 and A1 zones, the Highway Business District, which is a B3 zone. Mr. Weber is on the line with us, correct, Mr. Weber?
That is correct.
And he is a member of the Planning and Zoning Department. And we're open now for, maybe Mr. Weber, you want to take a moment and talk about this, then we'll open it for public comment, just so bring people up to speed.
The application was by the Sequoia Brothers Paving Company. They bought these 3 parcels. They are mixed with a combination of B3, S1, and A1. And they propose to rezone the entire 3 parcels to B3. It's contiguous with other B3 properties along Main Road in Ross Township. And then they would propose to reverse subdivide it into one parcel and then develop it into a self-storage system business. The department looks at these kinds of applications from the basis of two basic questions. One is the application consistent with the county's long-term comprehensive land use plan? And our assessment was the land use plan currently calls for directing commercial activities along major arterial roads or major connector roads to those arterials. And for Ross Township, Main Road is one of their two basic arterials, that and State Route 118. So it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then we assess it from a perspective of accepted zoning law and practice, and extensions of existing zoning districts into adjacent parcels is an accepted activity in zoning law. So our recommendation to the Planning Commission was to approve it. The Planning Commission at their public hearing took testimony and also agreed with our department recommendation and forwarded to council for with a recommendation of approval. So that's our official position and why.
Okay. And if people remember, we started this back in February.
February, yes.
And pandemic, coming into our locality here. There has been a period of time. We've asked that the planning and zoning department bring this back to us so we can move it along, because obviously there's been like a 3-month gap since this was initiated. So public, any members of the public who would like to speak to this proposed ordinance?
Mr. McGinley, is the code correct that they issued out online for this meeting? Because I sent it out to Rich Manta, and he says he can't get in with that code.
Well, I think Jared is online. I assume, Jared, can you check that?
The one that's listed on the website's 294-951-035.
Jared, can you hear that? I believe your mic
Yeah,
is.
so 294-951-035 pound.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, that seems to be correct.
Okay.
Anyone
be
from the public that would like to speak to this proposed ordinance?
Hi, Jason Carr from Sailorsburg, Pennsylvania.
Go ahead.
Jason Carr. Okay, thank you. Just a general question. The owners of the proposed storage facility, is anyone on council a family member, associate, or friend of the owners?
I hear no response to that. Anyone else? Sure. Anyone else? Any member of council who has a question for Mr. Weber? Any member of council who has a question for Mr. Weber? Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion for adjournment of the public hearing?
So moved.
Ms. Segment, who's second?
Mr. Perry?
Mr. Perry? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. Moving now to the voting session. We just did the pledge of a moment of silence, so we won't do that again. Would you please do a roll call, Ms. Lawrence?
Mr. Griffith?
Present.
Mr. Hawes is absent. Ms. House?
Here,
Ms. McDermott?
Here.
McGinley?
Present?
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Ms. Radel?
Here.
Ms. Sedman?
Here.
Mr. Schnee?
Present.
Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Vogt?
Here.
10 of 11 are present.
Thank you. Moving down to recognitions and ceremonial proclamations. As usual, we have several people who have retired in the past month. Mr. Ardo from the District Attorney's Office, Milner from the Security Sheriff's Department, Mr. Michael from the Corrections Office, the Luzerne County Prison Facility, Ms. Steeple from the Area Agency on Aging, and Mr. Yershaw, who was a detective in the District Attorney's Office. We'll send them out a letter of congratulations and wish them good health in future endeavors. Additions or deletions from the voting session agenda. I'd like to make note at this time, we got a very late email from the manager's office. They had received a very late email from the state DCED requesting that the council approve a resolution for the money that would be available to the county through the CARES Act program. That has been added to the agenda, and that was sent out earlier this evening. Unfortunately, it's because it was such a late notice. It was probably a little bit after 4 o'clock. So that will be item number 10 on the agenda. Anyone else?
Mr. McGinley, could you explain to me under the motion to suspend the bylaws, what bylaws are we suspending regarding the conduct of public meetings where the emergency declaration is applicable? Where in the bylaws are we having an issue that we have to suspend something there? I looked through the bylaws, I can't see it.
Normally we have a public meeting, we have people present as part of the public. That's not the case at this point.
Is that in our bylaws?
Excuse me, if I may finish. I'm hoping that in the very near future, we're able to accommodate that. We have some issues that we have to overcome, but we're working on them.
What particular section of the bylaws are we referring to that we're suspending?
Well, that came from I think Mr. DeLuca actually, or Ms. Slocum suggested we add that in order to have that on record.
Yeah, this is the, we originally had this discussion, I think, the first time that we did the Zoom public meetings. I think there was a requirement that there be permission granted in order to have council members appear via teleconferencing. I think there was a requirement that there be a.
I think the certain number for a quorum, they have to be actually physically present.
Physically present.
I mean, I could pull out the bylaws if you
That's not
want.
dealing with the emergency declaration. That's dealing with the first motion that we always do about suspending the bylaws for being physically present. I think the question was about what deals with the emergency declaration, what we're suspending with that.
I think that was also, that may have been based on Act 15. The governor's declaration relaxes certain requirements with regard to open meetings. That emergency declaration is still in place. So those, in whatever ways, conducting the meeting in this fashion is not in compliance, strict compliance with the Sunshine Act. That is that keeps us in compliance with Act 15, and so I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Mr. Griffith, did you hear that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I just don't, when we say suspend the bylaws and our bylaws don't say anything to that nature, I understand what we're doing, but it says suspend bylaws. Our bylaws don't say anything to that nature.
They do actually, though. I mean, if you want me to pull them out, I think.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, let's move on and we'll review that. Hopefully in the future we can eliminate.
Hopefully in our next meeting we'll be in person. We won't have to worry about it.
Well, I have hope, but like I said, we have some obstacles. But let's get down to additions or deletions.
Okay, I have a remove item number 7E off the agenda for the County Cares Commission appointments. We'd like to remove that from the agenda based on the ordinance that's below it until we figure out whether the ordinance is going to be adopted or not, or introduced, because it would be premature to go and appoint members to the committee if we don't know what the terms are or anything of that nature.
Well,
So,
Let's vote on the ordinance first.
yeah, that's what we can, I was just going to say we could reverse the order there and do that ordinance before we get to that point in the meeting. Okay?
okay,
All right, very good. Any other additions or deletions? Okay, do we have a motion to adopt the voting session agenda with that one reversal?
So moved, Kendra.
Okay, Kendra?
Second, Sheila.
Okay, Damon? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard, motion carries. Before we get too far, Mr. Dulico, do you want to speak to the executive session? Since we have that listed on our information for this evening's meeting.
Sure. County Council met in executive session from 5 p.m. Until I believe it was 6:05 p.m. And received a report from the chief solicitor regarding the matter of Rashida Hammond's pending case, and no deliberations took place and no.
Thank you. Moving down to motion to suspend the bylaws regarding the requirement of majority participating in the meeting must be physically present. Ms. Howe? Make that motion?
Yes, so moved, so moved.
Do we have a second for Ms. Howe?
Second, Sheila.
Ms. Saban? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. The second motion would be suspend the bylaws regarding conduct in public meetings to the extent the current format is inconsistent with the term of the state's emergency declaration. We have a motion.
do we have a motion to amend that? That's on your
Well, I
agenda?
just read it and put the word state in there instead of manager.
Okay,
So I don't think we need an amendment at that point, Mr. Griffith. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Sheila.
Saban, Mr. Snee, second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
no,
Mr. Urban and Mr. Griffith,
yes,
correct?
yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. We have public's not comment now on the voting session agenda items, please. Members of the public who would like to speak.
Mr. McGinley, this is Mark Rabo speaking.
Go ahead, Mr. Rabo.
Yes, first off, I have I'm kind of perplexed as far as suspending the bylaws with regards to the state emergency declaration, even though there was a controversial resolution. I know, but this was spoken about prior to agenda items, and this is on the agenda.
You only have 3 minutes. I thought you wanted to talk about the agenda items. Go ahead. You got your 3 minutes.
I will talk about it. I just wanted to make mention that House Resolution 836 passed, and it's currently being disputed in the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. So I don't know if that pertains to the suspension of bylaws or not, if it's necessary or not. Maybe the solicitor can expand on that after my comment. First off, I'd like to say I support the bus funding for Hazleton Public Transit or LCTA. I would just make mention that with regards to Hazleton Public Transit, the county should ask for the match for Carver and Schuylkill County for those 2 bus routes in McAdoo and Beaver Meadows, respectively, along with Can Do Corporation, since they were the ones who asked Hazleton Public Transit to create those bus routes in the first place. Secondly, I would suggest to add on the agenda item to Blighted Property Committee for the appointments for boards, authorities, boards, and commissions, since the council representative appointment ends in July. So I would strongly advise to add that on the agenda for the voting session. And also, I would like to thank, the state as far as with the COVID relief block grant for the county, for the business owners. And I would like to ask if the council can ask Mr. Riley to come into either a work session to explain for the utilization of the UDAG money to help out the small business owners in our county who have been suffering since the COVID pandemic started with their businesses, their hardships for their expenses. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like from the public to? Mr. Manta, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to express my concern about the busing situation. I think they should actually have the Luzerne County Transportation should put up their share for Hazleton. I mean, isn't it odd that the name of the bus company is Wyoming Valley or Luzerne County Transportation? Now, isn't Hazleton part of Luzerne County, or am I wrong in saying that? So you're running a dual busing system for the area, and you have double expense, you have double employees, and the amalgamated transit people at the Luzerne County Transportation, they would love to have those people in their union. So, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense why they would run two separate entities, but yet it's still for Luzerne County. That's like running a Dallas bus company because it's Dallas, Pennsylvania. Well, it's still part of Luzerne County. Am I correct, or am I just dreaming this?
Anything else, Mr. Manta?
No, that for now. And I'll tell you what. As far as the, this is just a comment. I can't see the agenda on my laptop right now, but
it's online.
The vote last Friday. Which part of it is that? Where is it at?
It's under Luzerne County Council, agendas, minutes.
Agenda Center. But anyway, what I'd like to throw out there is the debacle that they did up in Jackson Township and Lehman Township with the voting polls. That was a debacle. I mean,
okay, but that's not on our agenda.
Yeah, I know.
Agenda
but
items,
still,
please.
It has to be brought up. But anyway, like I said, the right here, Luzerne County Public. All right, I'll bide my time.
Okay. Anyone else from the public?
Yes. Ron Knapp.
Go ahead, Mr. Knapp.
I was reading the number 9 motion to introduce ordinance regarding the implementation of a determined property tax assessment, and I feel that that should have been in place a long time ago. We should be bringing in the appropriate amount of tax revenue on what the property is assessed at. It sounds like a solid, sound idea. And I guess I'll wait for old information. Everything from 1 to 9 is all we can discuss this time, right?
Agenda items.
Okay, I'll wait till later. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public?
Mr. McGinley, Jason Carr, Sailorsburg.
Go ahead, Mr.
Am I
Carr.
allowed to talk about the executive session?
No. Executive session is
Cannot.
confidential.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, moving on to second page of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 9th meeting?
So moved, Sheila.
Seaman, do we have a second? For Mr. Perry,
Yes.
on the question? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
No.
Mr. Urban? Any abstentions? Thank you. Old business?
And Mr. McGinley?
Go ahead, Mr. Griffith.
I'm still waiting for the answer regarding the Bureau of Elections not bidding the mail-in ballots or the mail-in applications as to why that didn't happen. Could I get an answer on that, please?
I don't know who has that answer. Anyone who could help Mr. Griffith?
I'll review that with purchasing. I don't have an answer at this time.
Okay, but you'll get one, Mr. Pedri? Okay, please.
That's been on the agenda for the last 3 meetings, Mr. McGinley. As to why that.
Brought it up the last 3 meetings, correct?
Right, I brought up the last 3 meetings. He's the manager. He knows the rules. Why was that not processed properly?
Well,
okay, I'll move on. I'll move on to my next. My next question is on the ordinance 2020-05 to extend the face period from June 17th to August the 18th. I spoke to a couple tax collectors, and we have some concerns about people who are paying the wrong amount based on the fact that the county never sent letters to the property tax owners or property owners telling them that we extended that period. So now property owners are sending in the wrong amount to the tax collectors, and the tax collectors are now having to send a check back to the property owner because it's the wrong amount, and or they're sending in rebate because they don't really know, because there was a discussion about extending rebate as well. So the property owner is very confused as to what the proper amount is to send for our property tax after June the 17th to August the 18th. So consequently, we have tax collectors getting the wrong amount. I have some concerns about if the tax collector decides to log in the right amount and the 10% penalty doesn't get remitted to the county, then there's a problem with that. More importantly is if they send in the wrong amount, is the county going to do an audit of that and send them back a refund, which is more work for the county to do, simply because nobody in budget and finance thought it was prudent to send the property owner a letter stating that council passed an ordinance that extended the face period until August the 18th. Now, I don't know why we didn't send a letter to the property owner, but I think that would have been the wise thing to do back when we passed that ordinance, to let the property owners know that they were giving the option to not pay their taxes in until August 18th. That was the purpose of the ordinance, was so the taxpayers could get the relief of not having to pay their penalty. And instead, we have taxpayers who are scrambling to pay their taxes in penalty, not knowing. We have mortgage companies sending the wrong amounts to tax collectors, not knowing what the proper amount is. So we have a concern here as to, and my question for the manager in budget and finances, why was no letter sent to the property owners to let them know that this was done by council to give them the relief that they needed?
Well, we will hold that question until we ask Mr. Sweats. He'll be participating in the work session, and that'll be a question that we'll have for Mr. Sweats at that time.
Okay, and then also on the, I asked once before, and I'll continue to ask under old business, what account is the $343,000 for the HAVA money for the reimbursement of election machines? What account was that put into? What line item was that put into? I will ask that to Mr. Sweats as well.
Yes, that'll be the second question when Mr. Sweats presents his report.
And I suggest that under code review committee, we put something in the code that says that the manager has to respond timely. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I just wanted to add that under old business that just not to forget that I would like to still hold a public hearing on basically the postmortem of the election process in the primary.
Okay, and I think that you and I spoke, Mr. Urban, and I told you we'd do something, and we will schedule that in July.
Okay.
I think they have their meeting scheduled tomorrow, the election board. So that should finalize everything. And then once we have a final for the procedure done, then we can move forward and discuss post-mortem of the election.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Moving down, number 1, motion to adopt a resolution authorizing county manager to execute a lease agreement between Kingston Borough and Luzerne County for the Magisterial District Court 11-01-05. Do we have a motion?
That's it, Schnee.
Mr. Sneed, do we have a second? Mr. Sneed. Who's that? Who made the
Sheila.
second?
Sheila.
Okay, Ms. Saban. On the question?
On the question, Mr. McGinley,
Go ahead.
I understand that facility is not ADA compliant. Is that correct?
It never has.
Never has been, correct, Sheila, that's correct.
Yeah, but I think they have a waiver because it never has been.
Well,
I
I don't think you can have a waiver for ADA compliance.
I think you can, depending on
let's
the age.
Ms. Crockrell, do you have information in regard to this lease?
I believe Paul Highmarsh, the court administrator, is on the line.
Okay.
But my understanding for this lease in Kingston that they did make some adaptations, an elevator, and they moved the courtroom to an area where they are ADA compliant.
Okay, Mr. Highmarsh, are you on? Unmute yourself if you have your mic muted. Mr. Highmarsh?
Okay, there he is. We're talking about the ADA accommodations at the Kingston Magistrate's office that were made.
Yes. There is no elevator. If there is an accommodation necessary, the borough allows us to use the council chambers on the first floor, which is accessible to everyone.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else with questions?
So are we having is there a way to get a waiver for ADA compliance then, Mr. Highmarsh?
I'm not familiar with that process, but I could certainly look into it.
Because I know we had that problem with election day, problems with polling places not being ADA compliant, and the federal government came in and had a big issue about the fact that we had polling places that were not ADA compliant. So I just don't want to end up in the same situation with magistrate offices not being ADA compliant.
We have been in that office for a number of years and worked successfully with the borough to handle such accommodations.
I understand that.
Okay.
I think you, as long as you make the accommodation, you have the ability to make the accommodation appropriately, you're okay.
All right. Anyone else with questions? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Griffith,
No.
Ms. Hauk,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
9-1.
Thank you. Moving down to number 2, motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the county manager to execute a lease agreement between Luzerne County and Luzerne County Domestic Relations. Do we have a motion?
So moved, McDermott.
Ms. McDermott, do we have a second?
Second, Kendra.
Very good. Ms. Radel? On the question. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Hauk,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
unanimous.
Thank you. Moving down to number 3, motion to adopt a resolution approving the settlement of the pending litigation in the matter of Rashida Hammonds, as administrator of the estate of Charlene, I guess, Mackey versus Luzerne County. Do we have a motion?
So move, Sheila.
Ms. Saban, do we have a second for Ms. Saban?
Second, Perry.
Mr. Perry? This was the resolution that we discussed during the litigation in the executive session. And at this time, I don't believe there's any public questions that can be brought forth. Anyone else?
I'd like to amend the resolution, please.
Make your motion, Mr. Griffith, please.
Okay, I'm gonna read a statement into the record, and I will put my amendment at the end, and council can vote on it. I want to say that the resolution tonight regarding the settlement of the lawsuit for Shaheen Mackey is an amount of $3 million is very concerning. County Council sat in executive session on Friday, June 5th for over an hour, reviewing a video recording of the situation regarding Mr. Mackey.
Mr.
Yes.
McGinley, this matter, and Mr. Griffith, we have to discuss this matter in executive session. The litigation is still ongoing.
Well, I didn't disclose anything that happened in executive session other than video recording, right?
You are disclosing what happened in executive session. Yes.
Okay, well, let me just put my amendment out then. I won't read the letter in its entirety then. All right. My amendment,
please.
Okay. I'm asking that the resolution for approval of a $3 million settlement be amended to include a resolution to terminate the Luzerne County manager and division head Mark Rokovich immediately, and that county council implement section 405 of the county charter to remove the manager, and also section 209B9 to make a cause to be made any investigation of Luzerne County Correctional Facility and its policies, procedures regarding the care of the inmates of that facility. That's my amendment.
Okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to write fast enough to get all the information. And I would appreciate if you would forward that when you have an opportunity so we can have the information correct. But basically, from what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that because of the actions in regards to this litigation, you're making a motion to remove Mr. Petrie and Mr. Rokovich.
Correct.
That's the basic gist of your amendment, am I correct?
That's correct.
All right.
I think it's important.
Everybody understand that?
I think it's important that we add accountability to the settlement.
Everybody understand that? Everybody hear that? Mr. Griffith made that motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Mr. Urban? Correct?
Yes.
On the amendment, questions on the amendment? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. McDermott?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Radel?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Mr. Griffith?
Absolutely.
Ms. Halleck?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No. The amendment fails.
Fails.
Going back to the resolution as presented, we have a first motion by Ms. Simmons, second by Mr. Perry. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Halleck?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Moving down to number 4. Motion to adopt an ordinance amending the Luzerne County zoning map to rezone 3 parcels of property totaling 2.83 acres in Ross Township from mixed zoning districts of B3, S1, and A1 zones to Highway Business District, which is B3 zone. This is the public hearing that we had immediately before the voting session. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Walter.
Mr. Griffith. Do we have a second for Mr. Griffith?
Second, Urban.
Mr. Urban. On the question. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Number 5, motion to adopt a resolution committing the local match for the state operating assistance for Luzerne County Transportation Authority. Do we have a motion?
Presented, Schnee.
Mr. Snee, do we have a second for Mr. Snee?
Second, Kendra?
Ms. Radel? On the question. Roll call, please.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt a resolution committing a local match for the state operating assistance for Hazleton Public Transit?
Presented, Schnee.
Mr. Schnee, do we have a second?
Perry.
Mr. Perry? On the question. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Motion carries.
9-1.
We're going down to, actually, we'll start with number 8 and then go back to number 7. Motion to introduce an ordinance amending the ordinance 2020-03 establishing the County Cares Commission. Do we have a motion?
Yes. Sheila?
Do we have a second
Second, McDermott?
on the question?
I just want to say this is to delete the County Cares Commission that the Office of Law approved.
Okay. Anyone else on the question regarding this motion amending the ordinance?
Walter? Go ahead, whoever was in first.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I thought we
Mr.
have
Perry.
an ordinance for this.
Excuse me? What the-
I thought we have an ordinance, for
We do
county.
have an ordinance. This would amend the present ordinance.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. McGinley. I must have been, I thought we were on 8. Are we on?
We're on number 8, which amends the previous ordinance for the County Cares Commission.
But wasn't that we have an original ordinance, so that was.
We have one.
Okay, so I should have voted no.
Well, you made the motion.
So I have to withdraw it, I think.
So you're withdrawing your motion?
Yes, yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes, I'll withdraw as well.
do we have anybody make a motion?
So moved, Urban.
Mr. Urban, do we have a second for Mr. Urban?
Second, Walter.
Mr. Griffith? Waller, I think you were cut off there. Go ahead. You had something on the question?
Yes, I think that the County Cares Commission is a great idea. I have no problem with it at all. The problem I have is the procedure that we're following in order to put people on this commission, as well as who sits on the commission. When this was put up for a vote, I voted for this commission without obviously doing due diligence to find out who was going to be on it. I was just assuming that the commission would follow the same guidelines that's outlined in the charter, and without asking the question, I didn't realize that we were actually going to put county council members on a commission, which is, in my estimation, and I know it disagrees with the Office of Law, but the charter is pretty clear that county council members and elected officials cannot sit on an authority board or commission. So there was no terms expressed in the ordinance, which, you know, the ordinance itself, I have no problem with. I have a problem with the fact that we don't outline any of the particulars in the ordinance as outlined in the charter is supposed to be done. So that's why I wanted to make the amendment to the ordinance to put the composition of the ordinance in there, much like you guys did when you drafted your ordinance for the recreational advisory board. You put the terms in, you put the who sat on the commission and the boards. So that was lacking in the original ordinance. So that's why I drafted the amendment to change that ordinance.
Anyone else?
Mr. McGinley, it's Linda.
Go ahead.
I would just say, I do agree with Mr. Griffith about the structure, that I think the structure needs to be defined in the ordinance that creates the commission. I did send an email to council and to Ms. Crocomo last week, you know, stating my feeling about it, that I felt that we were, I thought we were voting on a commission of citizens, and apparently it's intended to be a committee of council with citizen participation. I wasn't quite sure, and nobody responded to me about that. So I'm still not sure. And I would like to introduce this ordinance because I do think that there needs to be some structure in place to create a commission. I would like to know if the intention was to create a council committee or a council commission and staff it with some additional citizens or residents, or if the idea was to create a commission such as we had before, like we had a diversity commission and we had a commission for women and things like that, that have since been disbanded, but they were not functions of, they were resident commissions. People from the community sat on those commissions. So that's why I would like to see this ordinance introduced. And certainly, if you disagree with the structure that's listed in it, you know, you can amend an ordinance anytime up to when it's adopted. So anyone could put the structure that you like in there as an amendment to this ordinance.
Anyone else?
Just that the Office of Law stands by the opinion that was circulated, and that the commission, as it is structured, does not violate any legal precepts.
Anyone else?
I just think, you know, this is going to open Pandora's box regarding commissions and going forward, being able to install other commissions where council members are going to be able to sit on them. Things that you in the past have preached and basically prevented us from doing. You know, nothing will go and say that we can't have a prison oversight commission or something to that nature, or reconstitute things that the charter, you know, was pretty much eliminated in the past. So, you know, you're sort of walking a fine gray line here, and that's my opinion. I think the ordinance should have laid out terms. You should always front load things so we don't run into these types of, you know, problems in the future. And yeah, that's my opinion on this.
The Office of Law knows what line we are walking on, and you know, you're talking about an oversight committee. That's our commission. That is not what this County Cares Commission is about.
I mean, one commission to another, it's still a commission.
Okay.
The substance matters, sir.
Anyone else?
Yeah, and Mr. McGinley, if you look at the charter in 802 regarding who gets to sit on boards and commissions, it's pretty clear as to who sits on commissions. Obviously, this commission did not in 802A, it says prior to making any appointments or filling any vacancies on a board or commission, county council shall give notice of its intent to do so. That didn't happen. And solicit applicants in the manner prescribed for vacancies in the career service in section 705A of this charter. That didn't happen. And if you go down through this whole section of boards and commissions, it outlines all the process to put people on boards and commissions, and it's clear by its intent that it's not supposed to have elected officials on there or people who work for the county. That language is pretty clear in there. So if the Office of Law wants to stand by their opinion, that's fine. That's their opinion. But if you read the charter in its entirety and take the context of 802, the whole section of section 8 regarding boards and commissions, it's pretty clear that they don't want elected officials or county employees sitting on boards and commissions of any kind. It doesn't say whether they're advisory. It doesn't say if they're a commission of any other sort. It clearly says boards and commissions. So if we create a commission, whether it's an oversight commission or it's just a county cares commission, it doesn't, in this context of this charter, it doesn't really matter. It's a commission. And I think that the intent of this commission was to be a commission of council. That was, I think, Mr. Vogue's intent when it was first drafted, because it was drafted as a resolution until I said it had to be done by ordinance, and then he changed it. So I think the idea was to make it a council commission, and that's fine. Then people for elected officials could sit on there and be appointed by the chair. But the way it's structured right now by ordinance, the charter does not allow elected officials to sit on a board or commission. And if we insist that that's the case, I just need to know how we proceed from there. I just don't know. And I will certainly rescind my vote on the original ordinance, because that is not what I wanted to vote for at all. And that was not explained to me as a council member when that vote was taken, that we were going to have council members on this commission. I was taking the charter at face value that said elected officials will not be on a commission. So therefore, I want to rescind my vote if in fact we don't introduce this ordinance and move forward.
Anyone else? We have a motion and a second, Mr. Urban, Mr. Griffith, to introduce this ordinance, amending the ordinance 2020-03 regarding the County Cares Commission. Roll call, please.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
No.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Ms. Hauk,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
No, it's no.
Mr. Perry,
No.
Ms. Radel,
No.
Ms. Sedman,
No.
Mr. Schnee,
No.
Mr. McGinley.
No.
It fails.
Fails.
3 to
Going
7.
back to number 7 now. We had a very good interview session a week ago this evening. Mr. Perry, do you want to comment in regards to the interview session before we get into the nominations and appointments?
Well, yeah, yes, we had a very good one. The communication was really good. I commend Jared for doing it, and we had some great candidates. I'll give you the breakdown later on in the non-voting section.
Okay. Very good. Do we have a motion to open up nominations for the 44th Airport Advisory Board?
Motion, Sheila.
Seaman, do we have a second for Ms. Seaman?
Second, McDermott.
Ms. McDermott first, I think. Okay. All in favor of opening nominations indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. You do have a eligibility list. That's very current as of this afternoon. And if you look at that eligibility list, there is one name who is currently listed on the eligibility list for the 44th Airport Advisory Board. Do we have a nomination?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'll nominate Michael Barish.
Okay. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Do we have a second for Mr. Perry?
Sheila, second.
Ms. Seaman?
Motion to close nominations.
Mr. Vogt has a motion to close nominations. Do we have a second for Mr. Vogt?
Second, Linda.
Ms. Howe? All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. Since we only have one nominee and we have one opening, we'll have a resolution to appoint Mr. Michael Barish, B-E-R-I-S-H, to the 44 Advisory Board. Do we have a motion to appoint Mr. Barish by resolution?
Presented. Schnee.
Mr. Snee? Yep. Do we have a second?
Perry.
Second, Houck.
Ms. Houck? We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, for the resolution to appoint Mr. Barish to the Luzerne County 44th Airport Advisory Board.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Ms. House,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Very good. We have a motion to open nominations for the Luzerne, Wyoming County's Drug and Alcohol Executive Commission.
So moved, McDermott.
Ms. McDermott, do we have a second for Ms. McDermott?
Second, Perry.
Mr. Perry? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Now, the Drug and Alcohol Executive Commission, there are specific guidelines to fill specific seats on that commission. We have one that needs to be from the criminal justice system, and we have one that has to represent the elderly segment.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
I would like to nominate Dr. Charles Blewett and Mr. Nicholas Wilson.
Do you want to separate them as far as where they go, Ms. Howe?
Well, with the appropriate places, I think one fills the elderly and the other fills the criminal justice as
Very good.
appropriate. The terms are the same.
Okay. Ms. Howe makes that motion. Do we have a second for Ms. Howe?
Schnee, second.
Mr. Snee seconds that.
Move
Do we
to
have a
close
motion to close
nominations.
Who's that?
Linda?
Ms. Howe, do we have a second for Ms. Howe to close nominations?
Second, Vogue.
All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
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 Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. So we'll have a resolution first for the person who would fit into the criminal justice term. And according to our eligibility list, that would be Mr. Wilson. We have a motion to appoint Mr. Nicholas Wilson to a term on the Drug and Alcohol Executive Commission to fill in for the criminal justice.
So moved, Linda.
Ms. Houck, do we have a second for Ms. Houck?
Second, Perry.
Mr. Perry? Roll call, please.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Ms. House,
Yes.
McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Very good. Now we need a motion to appoint Dr. Blewett to the Drug and Alcohol Executive Commission, and he would fit into the spot that represents the elderly.
So moved, Linda.
Ms. Houck, do we have a second for Ms. Houck?
Sheila.
Ms. Seaman,
On a question real quick,
go ahead.
just the length of term, are you keeping the term in April or are you moving it to December? Like, you know, you and I spoke
We
today.
will, yeah, we talked earlier today, but we will look at those terms, and if we have to, we'll come back with the adjustment, but I'm not sure what the drug and alcohol bylaws have there, so I don't have a quick answer on that. But we will make that adjustment and come back if necessary, okay?
Okay.
Duly noted, though. So Ms. Hawk made the motion, Ms. Seaman made the second. Roll call, please.
Ms. House,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Stedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes. Thank you.
Unanimous.
Moving down to the next item, Luzerne, Wyoming County's Mental Health and Developmental Services. Do we have a motion to open up nominations?
So moved, Linda.
Ms. Hauk, do we have a second for Ms. Hauk?
Sheila.
Seaman, all in favor of opening nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. We now are open for nominations.
Mr. McGinley,
Oh,
it's
Yep.
Linda. I would like to nominate Raylene Daring for education and Jillian Matievich for the nursing positions.
Yep, and Mr. Wilson's already been placed into the previous, so that would include the two people. So Ms. Hauk has.
Oh, we only have one term.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Raylene Daring for the education spot. I'm sorry.
And the education spot. So
Yep.
Ms. Hauk, you still making that motion? Do we have a second for Ms. Hauk?
Second, Urban.
Mr. Urban? We have a motion to close nominations.
No.
Ms. Stegman, motion to close?
Nope.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to nominate someone else, so.
Well, you have two names there, and Ms. Daring is the only one.
It was Matievich, I guess.
Yeah, but she
Sheila, I
doesn't
did
qualify for the education position.
That
Oh,
seat is
I'm
not open.
sorry. I thought there was still a nursing, local health and welfare planning.
Yeah, but
No,
it's
no.
only
I
one
will
position.
close nominations.
Okay, Ms. Seaman makes a motion to close. Do we have a second for Ms.?
Second, Linda.
Ms. Hauk has a second. All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. Do we have a
Just have
motion
a
to
question
appoint?
too. Once again, with the terms on this too, because
Again, we will review those bylaws and whatever is appropriate, we'll come back to council with.
okay, because this
Duly
one is
noted.
under actually MHDS, which is a little bit different, and it has its own,
Right.
section of statute.
Yes, they do. And I know they have different, little different guidelines, but we'll make sure we get it correct. Okay,
Okay.
we had a motion to close. Do we have a motion to appoint Ms. Daring to the education position on the Mental Health and Developmental Services Program Advisory Board?
So moved, Linda.
Ms. Hauk, we have a second.
Second.
Mr. Urban? Roll call, please.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Stedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Ms. Hauk,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes. Thank you.
Unanimous.
Moving down to D, Luzerne, Wyoming County's Area Agency on Aging Advisory Board. We have a motion to open nominations.
So moved, McDermott.
Ms. McDermott, do we have a second for Ms. McDermott?
Second.
Mr. Vaux, second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions? None heard. Nominations are now open. We have two terms. We have two people on our eligibility list, I believe. Yes?
I'd like to nominate Mr.
Just
Chair.
Okay, just to note, both those people have put in for multiple positions, Ms. Fonstock and Mr. Warren. So go ahead. Mr. Perry, was that?
Donald Warren.
Okay, Mr. Warren?
Second, Linda.
Out. Very good. Any other nominations?
I would like to close nominations, Linda.
Okay, Ms. Hauk, you want to close? Do you have a second for Ms. Hauk?
Second, McDermott.
Ms. McDermott, all in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
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 Any in opposition, any abstention? None heard, motion carries. We have one person who's been nominated. Do we have a motion to appoint Mr. Warren by resolution to the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Board?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Mr.
Second,
Stern?
Hauk.
Who was second?
Linda?
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. House?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes,
Unanimous.
very good. Moving down to number E, Luzerne County Cares Commission. The terms will be adjusted in order to stagger them. Once we have the bylaws from the County Cares Group, do we have a motion to open nominations?
So moved, Kendra?
So moved, Vogt. Second,
Well,
Vogt.
Okay, Ms. Radels first, I think, on that, and Mr. Bowe, you were the second on that. All in favor of opening nominations indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Opposed?
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Any abstentions?
No, Walter as well.
Opposed?
Yes.
Okay, two in opposition, Mr. Griffith and Mr. Urban. Motion carried. We will do this since there are 6 terms. We'll do one position at a time.
Mr. McGinley, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Under the County Cares Commission, Justin Behrens, we got that response late, and I know Sharon did a yeoman's work of getting all the information to us. However, he interviewed in the county back in last year sometime, and he never interviewed. He never interviewed for the Luzerne County Cares Commission. I don't feel it's appropriate to have him even on the list. He has not. He never. I mean, if you interview for a position and you put yourself down for several positions, I don't think it's fair to the commission as well as the members of council for you to just arbitrarily put your name on a list of a new commission. We don't know if he hasn't been interviewed. We know nothing about whether he's qualified for that commission, whether has a problem with taking the oath. Any of those questions that the commission asks all the applicants, that was not asked of Mr. Behrens for this particular commission. So therefore, I don't think it's appropriate to even consider him on that list. He doesn't.
Well, you don't vote for him.
Well, he shouldn't be on the list. He needs to interview.
He did interview.
He didn't interview for that, though.
Within the last 2 years, he's on the eligibility list.
But he did not interview for that position.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Walter, I asked the same questions to everybody for every commission. So everybody gets the same questions.
I understand, but he did
And
not.
commission or board or authority, whatever, it's the same.
So anybody could change their name and put it on another commission if they've interviewed. Is that correct? Is that what the assumption is?
Over the past 2 years, Mr. Griffith.
As long as they've been interviewed, they can put their name on any one of the commissions they want, right?
If I could, Mr. McGinley,
Sure.
because I set this process up back in 2012, we did put in the requirement for the interview, and it was not necessarily for a particular commission, although some people wanted to be specific, but there have been cases where we have asked people on the spot in interviews if they are interested in other commissions. And we have also called people to ask them if they would be interested in another commission. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as he's met the interview process within the last 2 years, he's eligible to be considered for any commission that he's interested in being considered for.
Is there a conflict that he?
I think that we've had that situation in the past, and a couple of things that you mentioned were done in the past.
Right.
Well, I appreciate that insight. Is there a conflict with him being on that commission when he has a business that deals with those type of situations that he's going to be sitting on that commission?
I don't believe so.
He's the executive director.
His appointment is,
We look at for conflicts that have to do with whether they're receiving any funds or contracting with the county.
Okay.
If he's on that commission and he feels that there is a conflict with what they're doing or what they're addressing, then he needs to address that during the commission meetings.
Okay.
and
Thank you.
I don't know, Mr. Griffith, Mr. Behrens was, like you say, interviewed last year. At that time, he was employed by a different group.
Correct.
And there were some conflicts, and he was not allowed to be eligible for certain boards and commissions. Since that time, his appointment has changed. And I know Ms. Lawrence checked with him to make sure everything was up to date, and his new employment allows him to be eligible for boards and commissions.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Well, and I think it's a good question because there were some issues last year during his employment situation. Anyone else? All right, we're going to go, there's 6 terms. We'll go one at a time. First term, someone gets 6 votes. They become a member. They get the first slot, and then we'll work our way down through the first 6. So roll call.
We need nominations.
Yes, we do. You're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. We do need nominations. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 people listed there for on the eligibility list.
Wilson is off.
Nominations?
No, excuse me. What we did last time is I did the roll call and each person gave me their nomination.
No,
The
we
person
need to
wanted.
have nominations made from that list. And then on the roll call for each of those individual seats is where you name people. Nobody's been nominated off that list yet.
All right, let's do nominations, please. We have a
Wilson
nomination.
because he's already
Sent the name
appointed
of
somewhere else.
Mr. Joseph Grilly.
Mr. Grilly, Mr. Snee makes that nomination. Do we have a second for Mr. Snee for Mr. Grilly? Ms. Saban?
Yes.
Very good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I could nominate Carol Faystock.
And is that Mr. Perry?
Yeah.
Very good. Do we have a second for Mr. Perry for Carol Feinstock?
Second.
Second, Schnee.
Mr. McGinley?
I think Mr. McDermott got the second there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Mr. McGinley, if I could just mention that she's the only applicant for the Accountability, Conduct, and Ethics Commission.
You're correct.
And we do need someone on the Ethics Commission.
Yeah, you're right, Linda, but also that's just their first choice. That's what I thought.
Okay.
I don't know.
We have a nomination. Do we have other nominations, please?
Yes, this is Leanne. I'd
Yes.
like to nominate Amanda Blaine.
Amanda Blaine? Ms. McDermott? Do we have a second for Ms. McDermott for Amanda Blaine?
Second, Schnee.
Mr. Snee? Other nominations?
Motion to nominate Nicole Ferrantino. This is Kendra.
Ms. Radel? And who, do we have a second for Ms. Radel for Nicole Ferrantino?
Second, Schnee.
Okay. That's number 4 nomination. Do we have other nominations?
I'll present the name of Marcella Garvin.
Mr. Snee?
Second.
Do we have a
vote.
second? Mr. Vo?
Yep.
Very good. Any other nominations?
Yes, Justin Behrens.
Mr. Perry? Do we have a second for Mr. Perry for Justin Behrens?
Second, Schnee.
Second.
Okay. Other nominations? Mr. Nicholas, of course, Mr. Wilson is now eliminated because he's been assigned to a different board. Anyone else? Do we have a motion to close nominations?
Presented.
Mr. Snee? Do we have a second for Mr. Snee?
Second, Chris.
Mr. Perry. All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
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 Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. We have 6 people who have been nominated. There are 6 positions. Roll call, please, and if someone gets 6 votes, they become a member of the commission. But this is for the first position. Ms. Lawrence?
Ms. Radel?
Nicole Ferrantino,
Ms. Edmond?
Are we voting now?
You're voting for the first position, the first spot.
Nicole Ferrantino.
Okay, that's Saban.
Mr. McGinley, you only have 6 nominees and you have 6 seats. I mean, you could really do resolutions.
We could. If people wish to do that, I have no problem with that personally. Is everybody fine with that? We do 6 resolutions? I hear anyone in opposition or statement about that?
The only issue would be the terms.
Well,
So
the terms will be-
names on the first resolution.
Okay.
So someone needs to make a motion for a certain term, for a certain candidate.
Well, someone has to make a motion. Anyone wants to make a motion?
Move to, what are the terms? What's the first term?
Mr. Vogt?
I don't know.
There are none.
We don't have the bylaws.
All right, I move to adopt a resolution appointing Amanda Blaine to a term on the County Cares Commission.
Okay, Ms. Houck is for Amanda Blaine. Do we have a second for Ms. Houck for Amanda Blaine?
Second, McDermott.
Ms. McDermott?
Is
That's a
there a,
resolution. We need a roll call.
is there a limit to how many years of the term?
We don't have the bylaws.
Is there a limit? Are we going to put a limit? Can it be a 6-year term?
I would say no, based on.
No, I believe they have to be 4-year terms, don't they?
I think it was either 3 or 4.
Where does it state that somewhere? Does not state that there's a term limit.
Isn't there in new commissions that are formed have to have a 4-year term?
Yeah, Councilwoman Houck is correct. There are term limits.
Okay.
So can
that's
you
a 4-year term.
So can you make a 1-year term by staggering them? Is that possible?
That's what we're going to have to do. We have 6 people. We'll have to stagger them so that we have at least majority of the people there on the council of Ms.
So
Houck.
I would like to modify that resolution to appoint Amanda Blaine to a 4-year term.
Okay, I wrote that down, 4-year term. And we have a second from Ms. McDermott. Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Ms. Radel?
yes.
Ms. Edmond?
Yes.
Mr. Schneek?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
I'm abstaining because the process isn't according to the charter.
Ms. Houck?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Okay, Ms. Blaine is now part of the commission. Do we have another motion for a resolution to
That's the
appoint
name
someone?
of Mr. Joseph Grilly.
How many years, Mr. Sneak?
4.
4 years? Do we have a second for Mr. Sneak?
Second, Stedman.
Ms. Saban? On the question? Roll call, please.
Edmond?
Yes.
Mr. Schneek?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
I'm abstaining because it's not according to the charter.
Ms. Houck?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes. All right, so now we have two people who've been appointed to 4-year terms. Probably should be looking at staggering from this point, right? Do we have a motion?
I move to nominate Nicole Ferrantino.
How many years?
4, 3, 2.
Well, 2 or 3 or whatever, but tell me what you want.
3.
3?
Second, Schnee.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
No.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
I'm abstaining because it's not drafted according to the charter.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
8
Okay,
to 1.
We have another motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion. This is Leanne. I'd like to make a motion to accept Marcella Garvin for a 2-year term.
2-year term.
Second, Schnee.
Okay, that was Ms. McDermott and Mr. Snee. On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Urban,
No, sorry.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
I'm abstaining because it didn't follow the procedure in the charter.
Ms. Howe,
Abstain.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
We need to have an explanation as the abstention, please.
Okay, Mr. Urban, Mr. Griffith, I'll take care of that in a second.
Well, she can't abstain without the explanation
I
first.
understand that, but I wanted to let the roll call finish so that we had a continuity here, please. We will ask that question. Thank you. Where are we, Ms. Lawrence?
Ms. McDermott just voted yes. Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes. Ms. Howe,
7.
you have to provide a reason why you abstained, please.
I have a relationship to that candidate.
Thank you. Now we have 2 4-year terms, a 3-year term, and a 1-year term, or 2-year term, excuse me. We still have 2 more positions. We have a motion.
Motion for Justin Behrens on a 2-year term.
2 years. Mr. Vogt, do we have a second for Mr. Vogt
Second, Sheila.
on the question? Roll call, please.
Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
I'm abstaining because it was not formed according to the charter.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Abstain. Justin was the treasurer on my campaign.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Abstaining on this one because there's I serve with him on a Republican State Committee.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
7 yes, 3 abstentions.
Okay. And we have 1 more resolution.
Motion for Carol Fonstock on a 3-year term.
3-year term. And we have no one on a 1-year term. Is that correct?
Correct.
Second.
All right, Mr. Vogt and Mr. Snee. The question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Griffith,
Abstain because it was not formed according to the charter.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
No.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes. Thank you. Moving down to F, which is Luzerne County Children and Youth Advisory Board. We have one term available. We have one candidate on the eligibility list. We have a motion to open nominations.
So moved, McDermott.
Ms. McDermott, do we have a second?
Second, Linda.
Ms. Howe? All in favor of open nominations indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. Again, we have one opening and we have one person on the eligible list who wish to fill that opening. We have a motion to appoint Olga Papa by resolution to the Luzerne County Children and Youth Advisory Board.
Are we nominating first, since we opened nominations, or not?
We did open nominations, but we only have one opening and we have one eligible candidate. So we could do a resolution to appoint that person.
If they were nominated,
I'll present Olga.
Okay, Mr. Snee.
Second.
Second for Mr. Snee.
Second, Urban.
Mr. Urban. Ms. Olga has been nominated by Mr. Snee, second by Mr. Urban. We have a motion to close nominations.
So moved.
Mr. Urban, do we have a second?
Second, Sheila.
Ms. Saban, all in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard. Nominations are closed. We now appoint by resolution since we have one opening, one candidate. Do we have a motion for the resolution?
Presented, Schnee.
Second, Urban.
Mr. Urban? On the question? Roll call, please.
Ms. Howe,
yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Radel,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes. Thank you.
Unanimous.
G, we do not have any candidates now. With the exclusion of Ms. Bonstock with the county cares. Number 8, we have already dealt with, so we're down to number 9. Motion to introduce an ordinance regarding the implementation of determined property tax assessment for any property which is sold from Luzerne County Repository. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Linda.
Ms. Howe, do we have a second?
Second, Urban.
Mr. Urban makes a second. On the question?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
question. Is this something that we need a ordinance for, or is this the privy of the county manager?
Mr. DeLuca or Ms. Crocomo?
I'll speak to that issue. This falls under the purview of the county manager. It is true that in section 209, that county council can levy, establish, alter, and or abolish taxes and assessment, except as may be limited by this charter and applicable law. The section 1207B, which was a transitional provision, speaks to the Division of Budget and Finance and Service and what they're responsible for. It includes the assessment of real property and any other powers and duties, programs, services, or functions that may be assigned by the administrative code. If you look to the administrative code, that evidences that the power and the authority concerning real property tax assessment lies with the Office of Budget. I direct your attention to section 602, Division of Budget and Finance Services. Under A, functions of the division, I'll read to you, the Division of Budget and Finance shall perform the function of administering the financial affairs of the County of Luzerne and each of its agencies, boards, commissions, departments, and offices. It will be responsible for the financial administration of the county government, including the custody and disbursement of all county funds, the establishment and maintenance of budgeting, accounting, and financial management systems, the assessment of real property, and any other powers and duties and programs and services and functions that may be assigned by the administrative code. Next paragraph, the Division of Budget and Finance shall be responsible for all county budgeting and financial activities, including but not necessarily limited to the following county departments, functions, and services: tax claim, grant writing, property assessment. Just as a general proposition, there is a theory in the law when there's a specific versus general term in statutes or codes that the specific trumps the general. That's codified in our statutory Construction Act, and therefore, given the specificity in the administrative code as to the assessment of real property and property assessment, this would fall under the county manager.
Thank you.
And
Anyone
this
else?
is
Questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we already did have the letter sent out, and it did say, therefore, it is the opinion of the Division of Budget and Finance and the Office of Law that the sale price of property from repository be equated to the assessed value. It is further advisable to start changing the assessed value to the sale price for repository sales on a certain day, specifically September 1st, 2020. So that was already sent out, and I just assumed that would be accepted and would not need an ordinance. But we have committees to vet these issues. And, you know, we did talk about the assessed value of properties for the repository sales several times with the real estate committee. And in the short time, you know, our real estate committee has addressed and resolved many issues. And we're, you know, definitely moving forward and accomplishing things. So this is something that, you know, if it were going to be an ordinance, I would hope that the committee would be able to, you know, propose it, but also the decision was already made.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, we have a motion from Ms. Houck, second by Mr. Urban. Roll call, please.
Ms. McDermott?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Radel?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Houck?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
7-3.
Motion fails.
Failed.
We're moving to number 10, which is a recent addition. As I indicated when we started the meeting, the Office of the Manager received an email very late from the state Community Office of the Department of Community and Economic Development. What it deals with is the fact that the Luzerne County is eligible for funds under the CARES program. And in order to be able to access those funds, we have to have a resolution that needs to be voted upon in a public meeting, and it has to be received by DCED by July 15th. So we don't have another meeting scheduled till July 14th. Put it on tonight's meeting, and obviously this is an opportunity for the county to get some monies through the CARES program that have come through the federal government. So do we have a motion to approve the resolution? Luzerne County requesting the COVID-19 County Relief Block Grant funding from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. Need a motion. Mr. Schnee, do we have a second?
Second, Linda.
Ms. Howe? On the question?
Just what line item is it going to be going under?
That's going to be a budget amendment, Mr. Urban. It'll be in front of you hopefully for the July 14th meeting that we'll review. We don't have the funding yet. This is just the resolution that allows us to apply for the grant.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee? Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Public comment, please.
Mr. McGinley, this is Mark Rabo.
Speak up, Mr. Rabo. You're not very loud. You were louder than earlier today.
Mr. McGinley, can you hear me now?
Better. Go ahead, Mr. Rabo.
Yes, I'm kind of confused as far as with this consternation about the County Cares Commission. I was listening to the back and forth between the solicitor and members of council, and then she said about this resolution that you just voted on as far as with the assessment, the county assessment properties, that she said the specific outweighs the general, as far as the interpretation, and I agree with her on that wholeheartedly. Which I don't understand why that can't apply to the County Cares Commission interpretation as far as how the structure is when it pertains to that it's not statutorily strong. The County Cares Commission is a creation of county council. It is not a creation of based on statutory law, like for example the Blighted Property Committee or the County Jail Oversight Board. Those are statutorily backed boards that the county council can create, which has the statutory backing of state law and case law behind it, and also like the municipal authorities too. That's backed by Municipal Authorities Act. So my confusion lies within how the structure is, as some of the council members have said, with regards to the County Cares Commission, because if you have all council members that, if you want to make it charter compliant, you'd have to have either all council members, which would then have to be, an ad hoc committee, because then you wouldn't have any kind of, there's no federal or state funding behind this County Cares Commission from what I've heard. And also if you have a totally citizens board, unless the county council gives it authority to apply for funding, like for any kind of state or federal funding in the ordinance, then it would just be a citizens committee. So I think those things need to be ironed out and hashed out before the appointments were made. That's just my humble opinion on that. So I just wanted to, understand and, get a clarification on why, one is okay in terms of forming a county cares committee. And like I said, I fully support its purpose, fully support it. However, I think the structure needs to be hashed out and made clear to the public. Thank you.
Okay. Other members of the public, please.
Mr. McGinley, Jason Carr, Sailorsburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much. I just wanted to touch base upon the article that I read this morning regarding the death of Mr. Mackey. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it all day, thinking about how he actually died, having a seizure, and the guards at the Luzerne County prison facility not being able to recognize what was happening, and then unloading 2 full batteries of stun guns inside him. Has to be one of the most horrific ways to die, not being able to ask for help. And it's heartbreaking. And it's unfortunate. It seems as though that in order for you to pay $3 million, the county to pay $3 million, you must think there is some culpability on someone's part, either inside the prison or on the management level for the county. And I don't understand why it's not being why it was never discussed. Has anyone been put on written warning? Has anyone been put on final warning? Is Mr. Rakovich going to be terminated? Is he on written warning? Mr. Pedri, why didn't Mr. Pedri have Mr. Rakovich prepared for such instances? Why didn't Mr. Rakovich have the guards who took care of Mr. Mackey, who killed or led him to his death? Why weren't they prepared by Mr. Rakovich? For you to pay $3 million to someone, you don't want to go to court in order to avoid the punitive damages. And it's a real disgrace. And lastly, someone should start thinking about putting forth an ordinance where when there is an incident at the Luzerne County Prison, that the district attorney has nothing to do with any type of oversight or investigation regarding any incident. The district attorney is politically motivated. She relies on the votes of those people for her job to be reelected. How could an objective investigation take place by someone who relies on the votes of the people she's investigating? I would ask that the next time, there'll be a next time, either intentionally or unintentionally or accidentally, that the state police conduct any investigation into any mishaps at the Luzerne County Prison. I don't have any confidence whatsoever in the district attorney to provide an objective, sincere, and honest assessment of what happened, especially regarding the Mackey case where this poor gentleman died. It's a disgrace and it's an embarrassment. Mr. Pedri should be fired. Mr. Rakovich should be fired. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public, please?
Yes.
Yeah, Rick Manta here.
Mr. Knapp, and then Mr. Manta. Mr. Knapp
Mr.
first.
Manta.
No, Mr. Knapp
Thank you,
first,
Mr. Kinley.
please, and then Mr. Manta, you'll be next, okay? Thank you. Mr. Knapp?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman McKinley. First, I'm totally in agreement with Councilman Griffith about accountability with regards to this situation that happened at the prison, and the person speaking before me, I apologize, forgot your name, but the fact of the matter is there would be bias in regards to decision making from the DA, District Attorney's Office, because he's 100% right that for her to get elected back in office, all these guards and safety personnel they're all going to vote for her. So I mean, because she's above them, and that just is bias. That would be a biased decision on her part. The settlement of the case. The second thing I wanted to mention is last meeting I mentioned about facilities over on the 44th Glen side. The the levee system for walkers, 2.25 miles for walking, and facilities for, when Mother Nature calls. Well, the fact of the matter is, about I think a day or two after the fact, they moved Johnny's in. So I was quite surprised at how fast somebody moved on that suggestion, and that was very appropriate. And the last but not least, I can't drive this home enough times. We have a delay of nearly a minute from the Microsoft Teams in regard to, I see manager. I'm sorry, excuse me. I see the person on the screen, and when his lips move it takes a minute for the phone to catch up with that person. So I think that's a little bit of a setback for this technology we're using. And I've said it many times over that the situation could be handled through Teams. It's a technology that everybody uses through teleconferencing or video conferencing. And I mean, these council meetings are published on YouTube. So I can't see where there's a problem with somebody viewing it in Russia if they were. I mean, for security purposes. So, and last but not least, I think it's our right as taxpayers to be able to be in the same room with council members, to be eyeball to eyeball in decision making. I think that it's more of a personable experience, and I feel that the taxpayers, when we have that experience and interaction, we most often would get a more positive and accurate resolution to what we want to have move forward.
Thank you.
That's my
Knapp,
personal opinion. And I feel that Nanticoke Council meetings, they
Knapp,
hold them in
thank
person
you.
now.
Thank you. Mr. Manta?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. The first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to add to Walter's comment about that CARES Act, that CARES Committee. Now, I'm sitting there scratching my head and I'm saying to myself, yeah, it is a great thing, but are they designing this to be a parallel county council group? And that was my first question, because I see that the people that are appointed to this are county council people. And if you're going to have a CARES group and they're going to receive funds, so where are the funds going to go from the CARES group if they are authorized to have money? That's the second question. The third question is did anyone receive a response, and I asked this 2 meetings ago, from the letter that was sent to the president? All right. And also, meetings should be held in public. If the courthouse does not have a proper room to associate with this CDC guideline, then they should find a bigger place and have people come to the meetings and voice their opinions and look you people straight in the eye and tell you, yes, we agree with you, or no, you should not do this. And I feel that, I spent 35 years in the military talking to people face to face, and I know this is an odd thing for this coronavirus, that we never expected. But it was an odd thing that to have wars where you had conferences and you spoke right to the people face to face. And the last thing I'd like to bring up, I'd like to rear the ugly head of the stormwater again. We have to do something with the Wyoming Valley Sanitary Authority. I will beat this horse until it dies because they are still sending bills out to people, and people are not working yet, and they're getting monies and they're getting some funds. So what did they decide to do? Am I going to buy food? Am I going to pay my taxes? Am I going to pay my stormwater bill? What would you do if you were in that place, Mr. McGinley?
Okay, Mr. Manta, first of all, your question on the CARES, they are not county council. They don't have any funding. We received no reply from the letter that was sent to the president's office.
Okay, hold on. The county council, the CARES.
They're not a county council.
They should abide by the county council rules and regulations, correct?
I didn't say that. You asked if they're a county council. The answer to that is no.
Is there county council members on the CARES Act?
There are 3. Thank you. Anyone else from the public? If not, do we have a motion for adjournment?
Mr. McGinley, I have an item I wanted to ask about. I would like to make a motion that the county council meet at the courthouse at our next meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Griffith and Mr. Urban, correct?
Correct.
Question?
On the question, Mr. McGinley, is it possible that if the weather is good, we could meet maybe out on the south lawn?
It's possible. I mean, I can't guarantee the weather. I wish I could, but I can't.
I mean, if the concern is the ventilation in the room and,
Also, if you abide by the social distancing.
Right.
We can't fit anybody else in the room but the council members and the administrative staff.
Right, but if we were outside, that would be a help.
Yeah, I'm just clarifying the concerns.
Mr. McGinley, is the Wilkes-Barre zoning having their meeting in council chambers tomorrow?
Wilkes-Barre zoning?
Yes.
I'm not aware of any meetings that I know of.
It was in the paper today that they're meeting in county council chamber room. Tomorrow at 4:30.
I read that, and I'm not aware that they have reserved the room, but.
Could we ask Sharon?
No, they did not reserve it.
They had a legal ad in the paper today, and it was in the article that the Wilkes-Barre City Zoning Hearing Board is meeting at Luzerne County Council meeting room because the room at City Hall is too small.
Well, you heard the answer from Ms. Lawrence. She handles the schedule for the room. I'm not aware of any requests.
Okay. So can we have the meeting at the EMA building?
The EMA building would only allow like 2 more people than what we can do here. So it's really not meeting the normal standards that we would hope to have.
Is anything being done to fix the ventilation system?
It's being addressed right now.
That's the one that we just paid to have the air handlers done on, is that correct? Not too long ago through the capital plan? Did they just do something for the air conditioning system in the council room?
They built a chiller outside here in the parking area. I'm not aware of any handlers in the council room.
All right, that's all the questions. I'll call the vote then.
Okay. We have a motion, Mr. Griffith, Mr. Urban, to meet in the courthouse 3 weeks hence. Roll call, please.
Wait, Mr. Chairman, because it wasn't on the agenda, you have to ask for public comment.
Okay. Public comment in regards to meeting at the courthouse.
Yeah, okay, Richard Manta.
Yes, Mr. Manta. Yes, Mr. Manta.
Okay. All right. my opinion is, yeah, they should have it on the courthouse lawn. They should hire somebody to put a tent up if you're worried about the weather, or go to the Kingston Armory and ask the military if they can use the Kingston Army. And if that's not big enough for a meeting, I don't know what is. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. McKinley, this is Mark Rabo.
Go ahead, Mr. Rabel.
Yes, I mentioned this at the last meeting, and I stand by what I said at the last meeting. I feel that because the state legislature has addressed, as far as what their concern is with the emergency declaration, that they consider this in all essence over by their concurrent resolution, House Resolution 638. I think that that says it all as far as what the state believes the county and the municipal governments can do as far as meeting goes, as long as they follow CDC guidelines. So I believe that the county council should meet, provided that there's room for social distancing. If the county is having a problem finding space, adequate space, there's plenty of room down here in Hazleton, in the Hazleton area. So I'm sure that if you ask any of the municipal officials in Hazleton, Hazel Township, Butler Township, Sugarloaf Township, and Conyngham Borough, I'm sure they'll be more than willing to be accommodating. So please, if you need to, I'm sure the county manager can talk to some of those people, and I'm sure that they'd be more than willing to accommodate the county council as they have in the past with the traveling bans, as you well know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Mr. Knapp?
Thank you, Mr. McKinley. I can't stress this enough, this technology. And I have a broadband service. It gives me the performance of nearly 150 megabytes download speed and upload. My phone is connected through voice over IP. I know the technology. I know networking, and I know that this is less than short of inadequate. This technology we're using, the Teams, Windows, Mr. McKinley, while you were sitting there, and my computer is the newest computer you can have, it froze up for a solid minute. The Microsoft Teams, and again, there's a delay of nearly a minute. But the most important thing that drives home here is we have a governor leading our state who
Just to comment on the motion, Mr. Knapp.
I think, again, sir, it's on the Mr. McKinley. It's on the basis of personalism, accountability, face-to-face conversation. I have a military background too, and if you're talking to a sergeant and addressing something that you did wrong or your buddy did wrong in the military, they have their answer, and you're addressing somebody eyeball to eyeball. You get a more accurate response, body language, everything about the personalism and accountability is of necessity. And yes, thanks for the advice, suggestion to meet out on the lawn. I suspect that will be appropriate. But even still, at the base of the steps in the courthouse, where they do the ceremonies for the team to win in conferences and stuff. That's quite large in itself.
Thank you.
Yes, you understand where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Yes, we are. Yes, we do. Thank you. Any other member of the public?
Mr. McKinley, Jason Carr.
Mr. Carr.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to. Mr. Chairman, I just want to know, maybe from yourself, why you're resisting the will of the people to meet in person with the public and county council. And secondly, can we get a legal opinion from Romilda or veto regarding why we cannot meet in person at the next county council meeting. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else? The public? Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Griffith, second by Mr. Urban, to meet at the courthouse at our next meeting, which is 3 weeks hence. Everybody understand the motion?
Mr. Chair, on the question,
Yes.
it's just, for me, it's not a simple yes or no. So I'll vote yes for this, but providing that we meet in an area and we meet all the CDC guidelines. If we can't find an area like that, then of course I don't want to meet. So it's not a simple yes or no.
On the question, Mr. McGinley, as well.
Yes, Ms. Sageman.
I agree with Chris. You can move back into the chambers, but I won't be with you. I'll have to call in by phone because I'm in a category that has a sensitivity to this virus, and I am not going to risk my life when I have the ability to do this.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Berry.
Mr. Sneed?
Mr. McGinley, do we have a letter or something from engineering that says there's a problem with the air handlers? Is that what the situation is?
I didn't say that. I said it's being addressed. I never said there was a
Why
letter.
why can't we not use the council chamber rooms?
Because it's too small, number one. Number
small
two,
for-
we want to have the air circulation check to make sure it meets the normal standards. And I think that's only fair when you're talking about a considerable health situation with this pandemic.
But we could limit the amount of people that attend that meeting by public
But
or put
you
them
would
in the
have
rotunda.
No one else besides the council people and the administrative staff that have to come.
Well,
Would
the
have no-
administrative staff could be out in the rotunda.
I disagree with you on that.
Well, I mean, the public is out in the rotunda when the room's full.
I just disagree with you on that, Mr. Griffith.
Well-
I think it's necessary that we have certain people in the room.
So
Those
why are,
people we need.
so I will go back to Mr. Carr's question is why are we so resistant?
Who's
What is-
resistant? When we have all the safety requirements and all the things checked out, who is resistant? Mr.
Well, what's
Griffith?
who's saying there's no safety requirement? Who's saying that?
Safety requirements.
The
Who's,
CDC.
well, who's saying, we have room in the council chambers room for 11 council members, plus public of 50 people.
You go to that council room and measure it and look at it 6 by 6. We don't have room.
Is that an engineer's statement or is that yours?
That was from our engineering department.
Okay. Well, then what's the amount of people that room could hold safely according to CDC guidelines?
14, 15.
Wow.
Yeah. It's astonishing.
I'd like to see that written report.
Well, I can
I
offer
really
you
would.
an email, but I don't have a written report.
Yeah, okay, the email will be fine. Because
Okay.
I think that's just horrendous.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't want to put anybody's health and safety at risk.
Oh, I agree. I agree
That's
with
not
that.
fair to anyone who has to partake. We have
But
enough.
but I think we
You
can
got to
find other
remember, Mr.
facilities.
Griffith, we're in there for several hours at a
Yep.
time. We're not
I
there for
agree.
a 10-minute in
No,
and
I
out
don't.
transaction.
I'm not looking to put anybody in harm's way, but I certainly think there's
Well,
other
this
facilities in the
motion
county.
will put people in harm's way, I believe.
Well, there's other
We have
facilities that
answers.
we could use.
Till we have answers. Anyone else?
This is Leanne McDermott.
Yes.
Again, if we could do it with the CDC guidelines, making sure it's safe, I have no problem with doing it in public, but again, I think we need the specifications or everything worked out.
Can we add that to the amendment? Or to the motion?
Sure.
Who's going to make the amendment?
I will vote.
Mr. Vogel, CDC guidelines?
Yeah, and safe air circulation.
Thank you. Do we have a second for Mr. Vogel?
McDermott, yes.
On the amendment to the motion, adding the CDC guidelines for social distancing and making sure the air circulation, et cetera, meets the standards. Correct, Mr. Bo?
On the question, Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
I just want to say that for some people, the CDC guidelines are one thing, but the CDC guidelines also say if you have certain immunity problems or you have certain health conditions, you shouldn't be there regardless of the CDC.
No, and I agree with that, Sheila, and I certainly would not want you to attend that meeting if you felt in any way compromised, in any way that you might be put at risk. Certainly, we have the ability for you to attend by other means, but I don't think it's fair to the public to not have meetings in public when there's other facilities that we could do that. I'm not in favor of the air handler guideline in the motion. I certainly think we need to follow CDC guidelines, but who makes that determination in the motion? So if we go to the arm,
we'll get a professional determination of that.
Wow.
Excuse me, this is
Okay.
Kendra. Excuse
Yes,
me,
Ms. Fraser.
Mr. McGinley. So we're saying, I just want to make sure the amendment that I'm hearing it correctly. So we're saying the CDC guidelines, but we're not just specifically stating social distancing, right? Because I think that includes social distancing, wearing
Yes.
a mask, as well as if you have a temperature of over 100.4 degrees, you cannot attend.
That's correct. The CDC
Okay. I
guidelines
just want to
have
make
all.
sure we're including all the guidelines and not just social distancing.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
and I do believe the sheriff is doing that now, and anybody that attends the courthouse, if I'm not mistaken.
Anyone else?
Why not just hold it up at LCC in their auditorium?
Their auditorium, their building that had the auditoriums was under renovation, Mr. Griffith, and I don't believe it's open yet. They were doing a massive renovation. They had some issues there with some mold and other things.
I don't mean to butt in, but Kingston Armory is a big armory.
Mr. Manta, this is for council now. Okay, we're voting on the amendment, the CDC guidelines and the air rotation. Roll call, please.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee? No, you said correct?
This was just on the amendment.
This is only on the amendment.
The guidelines,
Guidelines.
yes.
You said a yes from Ms. Radel? Yes from Ms. Radel, no from Ms. Sedman, yes from Mr. Schnee so far.
Right.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
No, I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry.
No?
That's correct. No.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
And Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
7 yes, 3 no.
Okay, the amendment passes. So we go back to original motion by Mr. Griffith, second by Mr. Urban with the amendment. We have the next meeting at the Luzerne County Courthouse. We're voting now on the motion with the amendment. Roll call, please.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee? Yes? That was a yes, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
9 yes, 1 no.
Okay. Now do we have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved, Kendra.
Urban.
Ms. Radel, Second, who was that?
Urban.
Mr. Urban? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. It's now 10 minutes after 8. Many people have been on for over 3 hours at this point. How about we take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 8:15 if we can with the work session, please? Thank you.
Mr. McGinley, I'm coming in on my cell phone.
Hey, Tim, just to clarify, you're muted.
Yes, I'm muted. What's up, Jared? Okay,
Yep, you're good.
good to go. Well, it's 8:15. Has everybody had a minute to collect themselves, do what they needed, or get a drink?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
let me get started then. We're gonna call it to order. We did the pledge